Now, in this week's edition of Let's Talk Some Star Wars, we'll be taking a look at the results of the poll that asked, what was the best or your favorite movie in the sequel trilogy? And if you didn't happen to enjoy any of them, which was the most tolerable? As usual then, I'll also be reading and responding to some comments, as well as showing off the artwork that was sent in this week. And speaking of artwork, at the end of the video, I'll be making a bit of an announcement about the version of the sequel trilogy I've been working on. And if you're maybe a bored artist looking for something to do, or to maybe get your work out there a bit more, I just might have something for you. So stick around to the end, or just skip there, I guess. But for now, let's get to the results of the poll, where we'll see that it wasn't even close this week, with 78% of people voting The Force Awakens as the best or their favorite or most tolerable movie of the sequel trilogy. 14% then said The Rise of Skywalker, with a final 8% saying The Last Jedi. And this is where I'll give my usual disclaimer that another channel running the very same poll might get very different results, because I'm obviously not the most pro sequel trilogy channel out there, which means a lot of people here, though certainly not all of them, will likely be picking the most tolerable one instead of picking their favorite, because they don't really have one. And if I had to guess, I'd say that if we could do a poll only of those who truly love or enjoy the sequel trilogy, The Last Jedi would do a lot better than it did here, and I think The Rise of Skywalker would do better too. Alright, and before moving on, let me just take a quick moment again to thank everyone who votes and or comments. I do greatly appreciate it. Also, a big thank you to all the artwork that was sent in this week. After mentioning I got very little last week, there was a flood of it, and hopefully I can get to all of it this week. And by all means, do keep it coming. Okay, and now let's get to those comments, starting as we always do with the top-rated comment, which this week came to us from Jim Broomy, who said, I thought The Force Awakens was easily the most enjoyable. However, it also did irreparable damage to the story by destroying the Jedi and the Republic essentially between episodes. Okay, so one of the things I really appreciate about the prequels is they do a great job of setting up the original trilogy. They don't do it flawlessly, mind you. There are some small inconsistencies. But if you watch the movies in numerical order, Episode 4 very much feels like it picks up the story right after 3. Nothing all too major has happened off-screen in between the movies, if you will. I can simply say or be told that the Empire and the Sith have been ruling the galaxy for the past 19 years, and they built that Death Star thing we got a glimpse of in Episode 2, and you're good to go. That's not only everything you need to know, but it's the logical course of events given everything we saw in the previous movies or parts of the story. Again, we've missed nothing major off-screen. When you watch Episode 7, though, it feels like we're missing or skipped a part of the story. Big events have happened off-screen in between these movies. The Jedi Order that we all assumed would be rebuilt by this point, under Luke of course, is already gone. And although the New Republic is present, it just gets blown up in one shot halfway through this first movie in the trilogy. There's also this strange resistance for some reason that's never ever explained in the movies. In other words, the return of the two systems or organizations that the previous trilogy was all about reestablishing, the Jedi and the Republic, are already completely gone in The Force Awakens, and the Empire that we fought so hard to take down just reformed and renamed themselves the First Order. It makes us ask not only what in the hell happened in the meantime, why this is all changed, but what was the point of the previous trilogy when everything is back to the exact same spot it was when that one started? We have a small band of freedom fighters taking on a huge evil regime and one last hope for the galaxy, or one last possible Jedi that can save us all. And as I've said before, the sequels should have been all about a test for the New Jedi Order and the New Republic. They both should have been back in at least relative full force, and a new threat introduced in the movies themselves. I'm not saying nothing important couldn't have happened in between 6 and 7 off-screen, but the movies really should have more or less started by seeing things that the previous trilogy implied would happen. Again, we have the Jedi back and the New Republic back. And then something new comes in and challenges them. And then when in the end they win against some great new threat, the story can end with us assuming they'll endure for another 1,000 generations. Okay, let's now get to another comment, this time from C. Bowser, who said, I can't bring myself to pick, just don't like any of them. Which is fine. I kind of expected, and of course got, a lot of comments saying that they couldn't pick or didn't want to pick, or where is option D, none of the above, because they don't like any of them. I also did get a fair share of comments from people who said it was hard to pick because they enjoyed all of them. There was also a lot of comments like this one from Suik V, which perhaps begins to explain why The Force Awakens did so well in this poll. Anyway, they said, when I watched The Force Awakens for the first time, I remember thinking, well, this movie was fun, but in order for it to be good, they've got a hell of a lot of stuff to explain in the next movies. Needless to say, they failed miserably at that task. There was also this comment from Torn a Dragon who said, The Force Awakens was boring and broken, but it was very open-ended. Anything could happen afterwards. Unfortunately, anything did happen. There was also this comment from Chris Maxwell who said, I will stand by this until the day I die. I thought The Force Awakens was an incredible Star Wars film and was the perfect way to introduce the new trilogy. Then it went to hell. We also had this one from Whispered Flame who said, I will never forget the momentous feeling of Star Wars being back and having so many exciting questions after leaving the theater when I saw The Force Awakens. It's a shame that my interest died the moment I saw Luke nearly kill Ben and just abandon everyone because he was too ashamed to face his failures. And there were tons and tons of comments just like these. And the thing is, people were excited after The Force Awakens. Even if you didn't think it was the greatest, most people were still intrigued by the questions or mysteries in it. Hell, my whole channel was built off theory videos because of that movie. Problem is, or was, by leaving it so open-ended, the long-term view or feeling towards that movie was going to hinge greatly on what the next movie did with those questions. And so now I see a lot of people blaming The Force Awakens for everything, where if things had gone differently, maybe they'd be thanking it for setting up what had been a great trilogy. As for which one I'd personally blame, it's kind of like that old question, which came first, the chicken or the egg. It's a question with no real answer and can certainly go either way, I think. But what ultimately does deserve the blame is just poor planning for the whole trilogy. Not having one cohesive story mapped out from the start doomed it from the word go, at least in my opinion. Okay, next up then we have this comment from Ari the Arctic Fulf, who said, The Last Jedi was the only one that tried anything interesting. It didn't do great, but I appreciate the ambition. You know, for whatever reason, I often get asked to say anything nice about The Last Jedi by people who really love the film. And I'll usually default to, well, it's pretty good visually. But I will agree with Ari here. It was the only one of the 3 sequel films that tried to be anything more than a surface-level popcorn flick. And I'm not saying it necessarily succeeded, or that the message it aimed for was the one it should have aimed for, only that Johnson tried to make it something more, and many people do appreciate it simply for that fact, that it's an attempt at something more, and not just mostly mindless big action, which is what JJ seemed to go for in his 2 films. That then kind of brings us to this comment from Craig Campbell, who said, The Last Jedi was a thoughtful deconstruction of the Star Wars mythos. The other 2 were just pandering and fan service. Well, I don't know that I'd use the word thoughtful, but I do see what you're saying, and I think the 2 biggest problems with doing a movie like The Last Jedi were timing and that they used Luke Skywalker to try to make their point. Because I'd argue till I'm blue in the face that the second to last movie in the 9-part Skywalker saga was not the right time and place for a deconstruction of Star Wars. Do something like it outside of the saga in an anthology-style film, and don't use Luke, and I think people may have really enjoyed something like it. I mean, imagine a movie like this, but they use Mace Windu, where he survived the events of Episode 3 and gave up on the Jedi, and maybe, like Yoda and Obi-Wan, he exiled himself. But unlike those other 2 who knew about the New Hope's Luke and Leia, he didn't know any of that and just lost faith and gave up on everything. And at one point is found by a young student, and well, you know the rest. And sure, maybe some big Windu fans out there really wouldn't like that idea, or maybe they would, I don't know. But if you want to deconstruct Star Wars, you don't use Luke frickin' Skywalker, the guy who built Star Wars. That was just an asinine decision, in my opinion. Moving on then, we now have this comment from Raphael Lepai, I hope I said that right, and they said, The Rise of Skywalker by far, most action, fast pace, and isn't a clone of A New Hope. Plus, we get to see the main trio adventure together, something both earlier episodes lacked. My only gripe is the lack of Anakin and probably leaving Palpatine's return left for the novel. First of all, here I did appreciate putting all the main characters, Poe, Finn, and Rey together. Better late than never, I suppose. Anyway, even though The Rise of Skywalker actually took second place in this poll, there weren't many comments at all made about it, well, positively made about it. And not intended as an insult towards you, Raphael, but most of them did talk about how they liked the fast-paced, action-packed adventure style of the film, and didn't really mention much else about it. And that's certainly fine if that's what you liked about it. I've said before that I can enjoy The Rise of Skywalker when I take it out of the context of the Skywalker saga and just watch it as is. Problem is, of course, this was the finale of the whole damn Skywalker saga. People should have more good things to say about it than I liked how action-packed and fast-paced it was. And one of the few comments that did go a little more into depth, was this one from Sir Densington, who said, "Strange as it may seem, I think The Rise of Skywalker is my favorite. I wouldn't pick Episode 8, but I had to think about it. I almost chose Episode 7, but that movie just seems like an empty shell with a flashy exterior and zero payoffs later. So I picked the one with the most amount of stuff I personally liked. For example, I liked all the Palpatine stuff, I liked Rey and Kylo's fight on the Death Star, I liked Kerry Russell's character, Billy D did a great job, I like the end battle of the third movie more than the other two. They're all bad options, but for me, Rise of Skywalker is my favorite." Okay, and before getting to the final few comments, it's time to pick a couple of what I like to call good comments, but just too damn long to read in the video. And you can, of course, pause and read them yourself, but either way, I just like to acknowledge the time and thought they clearly put into their responses. The first one comes to us from Jake Booze, and the other one is from a disappointed black man, who I will also once again thank for being the one to name my other series, Battle of the Heroes and Villains. And of course, right now in that series, we're discussing Palpatine. And if you'd like to vote and or comment, the link to that poll is in the description below. And now on to those final few comments, starting with this one from Ben Fillinger, who said, "Rey's introduction is literally the highlight of the damn trilogy. It felt new, but like old times." Then this one from Ovwin, who said, "I still do regret how they're not making Finn as the main protagonist. Such a wasted potential. Imagine a trooper becoming a Jedi, man." Then this one from Big Mac, who said, "The Force Awakens was my first Star Wars movie in cinema, so yeah, there's your answer." Then this comment from Damon Massis, who said, "Honestly, The Last Jedi. It was the only movie of the three with some substance. Sure, some things weren't good like Rose, the casino planet, etc., but I personally think they resolved Luke in a very satisfying way and made some good character development for Rey and Kylo. The Force Awakens was a bland setup, and The Rise of Skywalker threw everything away and made it whack." Then we had this comment from Frog Level 20, who said, "Looking back, none of them deserve the title of being a part of the Skywalker saga. The Force Awakens had potential, but we all know by now that it was just a cash grab with no plan or direction for the rest of the trilogy." Then we had this comment from Nazimo19, who said, "Reactions after leaving the movie. Force Awakens, interesting and hope for the future. The Last Jedi, God, what did they do with the story? It's so meh. The Rise of Skywalker, pacing was horrible. The holes, there are so many holes. At least it was entertaining." We also then had this comment from Sugarcomb Films, who said, "The Force Awakens is a decent, passable movie that was the right call for a brand new trilogy. It eased everyone back into Star Wars. The Last Jedi is a good movie that should not have been a Star Wars movie and completely broke the fan base. Rise of Skywalker is a corporate sham of a film that tries to please everyone, but pleases no one, blatantly rips off Endgame, and in the end can't even be considered a decent film without Star Wars." And finally here we have this comment from A Dude Law, who said, "The Force Awakens brought back the fans. The Last Jedi divided the fans. The Rise of Skywalker repaired the fan base into hating The Rise of Skywalker." And you know what's probably the saddest part about the sequel trilogy? It seems like very few fans are 100% happy with it. There's something about it that almost every fan doesn't like. And don't get me wrong, it was never going to be perfect. It was never going to please everyone. But it certainly could have and should have been something that a lot more fans were generally satisfied with and had enjoyed overall. Okay, and now just a very brief update on my sequel trilogy. Yes, I am still very much working on it. I'm not as far along as I'd like to be at this point, but I am working on it. I also haven't forgotten about the second channel that focuses on games, collecting, and so on. There's just been a lot going on behind the scenes in my personal life that has taken up a lot of time, which, as you know, is just a reality of life every now and then. I'm also moving in the very near future, so packing and preparing for that has been eating my time as well. Anyway, for those curious or interested or who have been asking about it, it's going to be a mostly original story. And I say mostly because I will be taking some inspiration from the EU as well as what I think George Lucas would have gone for. I'll also be adding my own thoughts into the mix as well. In other words, this is not going to be a rewrite of the sequel trilogy we got from Disney, though I might do one of those at some point for fun too. It's also going to be very similar in style to previous fanfics I've done, only I will be using voice actors and hope to make it almost like a motion comic, which means I'm going to need the help of a few very talented artists out there who can volunteer a great deal of time towards this project. And I say volunteer because I certainly don't have unlimited resources to devote to this, though I will be more than happy to promote the work of anyone who does help me, and if I am able to monetize this, and it does well, I'll be happy to compensate those who have helped me along the way. Basically, if you're an artist with a lot of free time on your hands and you want to be a part of this and to maybe get your name out there, contact me at the email address below. Just know that it's going to be a couple more weeks yet before I can really get this phase of the project in full swing, basically after I move and get settled into my new place, but I figured I'd start looking for people now. And speaking of fanfictions and stuff like that, if you're looking for a good story in the meantime, check out the one my friend Darth Revan did over on his channel. It's called Retribution, a Knights of the Old Republic short story, or you can head over to the channel Star Wars Elseworlds for some other great what-if stories, links to both of which can be found in the comments below. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what your favorite or most tolerated movie in the sequel trilogy is, or to tell me what you thought about what I or anyone else had to say in this video. Either way, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.